broadcaster started. Thanks for coming, everyone. Good morning. Members in attendance? Yep. Do we need to do anything with that? No. Officers in attendance? Yes. Thank you. Apologies, leave of absence. No apologies? Okay. I'd just like to do acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land we are meeting on and pay respect to their elders, both past, present and emerging. And I'll go on to the bereavement condolences. Could everyone be upstanding, please? We'll have a minute's silence as a mark of respect for those residents who had passed away during the previous month. Thank you. And I should have welcomed our guests, Alan and Mia Isherwood, who will be doing a presentation later on. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'd like to seek a motion to suspend standing orders to talk about an update, a staff update. So could I have a mover to suspend standing orders so that I can give an update?
I'll move it.
Moved by Kev, seconder. Councillor Hodge, thank you. Thanks very much. Late yesterday, the CEO resigned from TRC effective immediately. Justin Commons came to council in 2018 in the first instance as an acting manager of finance to address the 2017-18 rates issue, and soon after became council CEO immediately following the departure of the former CEO. I believe Justin was an accountant by profession, called South Australia home, that had served in local government in Queensland before arriving on the tablelands. In the short time I've known Justin, he proved himself to be professional and extremely hard-working. And for councillors Bilney and Hayden, who worked with him in the previous council, they held him in very high regard. On behalf of those of us elected, as well as those officers and staff working in the organisation, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the contribution of Justin to navigate and steer this significant ship over the last couple of years. Leading a council of any size in the 21st century is no mean feat. Council wishes Justin all the very best in the future. Now I also have a resolution that I'd like us to pass. The resolution is, does everyone have that copy of that, Jackie?
It's in front of you.
Oh, okay, thank you. The resolution is that Council resolve to accept the immediate resignation of Mr. Justin Commons in accordance with the terms of his contract of employment dated 14 May 2018. Could I have a mover, Councillor Wilts, a seconder, Councillor Cardew? Those in favour? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. 5. Councillor Hayden and Bilney, would you like that recorded?
Yes.
Yes? Yes. So if they can be recorded, thanks.
So I'd like to speak to this motion.
Yeah. Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I personally am disappointed Justin is leaving this organisation. I appreciate all his efforts. He has always had the staff's best interests at hand, always passionate about the broader community and had their interests in the front of all his decisions. He has lifted this organisation from dysfunctionally it was dysfunctional anyway, that's what it was. It is a great loss to the TRC region. He was always committed to his position and he was an inclusive manager. Sometimes when you just because you butt head with people, you move on and learn to work with them, but it is what it is. So I'll say nothing else.
Thank you. Councillor Bilney?
Yep. It's with a strong sense of disappointment with the announcement of CEO Justin Commons' resignation. I accept change is needed, which I consider should be undertaken in a measured, controlled and informed manner. In my mind, Justin has been a hard-working, supportive and loyal officer, and his departure will be a substantial loss to this organisation and the community at large.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to talk? Thank you. Could I have a mover to go back into the standing orders, please? Councillor Cardew, seconder. Councillor Wilts. Those in favour? Thank you. Carried. Do we have any declarations of any material personal interests / conflicts of interest by councillors and senior council officers?
Yes,
Councillor Hodge.
Mayor, in relation to item 11.1, I have received an MPI in regards to I do consultancy work for the owner of the property, Cuda Farms, and I also do their amendments of their water licence. So I'll remove myself from the meeting and vote.
Thank you. Following on from Councillor Hodge, I'd like to declare a perceived conflict of interest with 11.1. One of the owners of that holding also leases a paddock on my farm. So, like Councillor Hodge, I'll be leaving the meeting entirely for the discussion and the vote for 11.1. Any other?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I've seen a draft mayoral minute.
Yes.
That concerns the appointment of the interim CEO.
Yes.
I will be leading the meeting while that's discussed.
Very good, thank you. Are there any other conflicts or perceived conflicts to be declared? Thank you. There's no motion to alter the order of business. Confirmation of the minutes. So the minutes of the April meeting. Would someone like to move that the minutes be adopted? Councillor Hodge, do we have a seconder? Councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Thank you, carried. Very So now we'll go to our invited guests, Alan and Mia Isherwood from the Tablelands Action Alliance, to do their presentation. Over to you.
Thanks, Rob. I'm Alan Isherwood, and on behalf of the Tablelands Action Alliance, I congratulate Mayor Marty and new and re-elected councillors who have stepped up to the role of community leaders in these turbulent times. On behalf of all present here this morning, I acknowledge the First Nations traditional custodians of this land, the elders, past, present and emerging. How does that?
You've probably got to point at the laptop point of your.
So founded in 2014, the Tablelands Action Alliance is a non-partisan, not-for-profit local community organisation who share a common vision for better government policies regarding human rights, natural heritage, social justice, fairness and a sustainable future. Now, prior to the TRC elections on the 3rd of March, all candidates received a letter from the TAA referring to, among other things, the Local Governments Association Queensland Initiative, the Climate Resilient Councils Program, and how the TRC can contribute to mitigation and adaptation to the impacts of climate change. So now that a new council has been formed, we'd like to continue our dialogue with council to focus on post-COVID recovery and what that might mean for the TRC. Now these photos by photographer Greg Sorensen of an event on the 22nd of February this year demonstrate clearly the extent of local and regional concern about climate change.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors. My name's Mia Isherwood. I have a background in law and environmental science, and I've worked within the legal system, within government and for various community organisations, supporting a sustainable approach to environmental management. In a nutshell, the best available science tells us that our climate is changing. Climate change affects all of us, across all sectors of society. Our economy, livelihoods, food, water security and health are at stake. Impacts are already being felt, even here on the Tablelands. And the projections are that things are set to get worse unless we take urgent action now. Successful mitigation and adaptation is up to all of us. We're facing a time of unprecedented challenges for all levels of government. The local government response is critical to the success of post-COVID economic recovery. In responding to these challenges, it's crucial that the broader context and links to climate change are recognised. We have an unparalleled opportunity to reshape our local economy for the good of all and address the climate crisis at the same time. We need to build back better. In these types of situations, and with disruptions to business as usual, we now have a rare opportunity to gain insights and develop new approaches that can improve our lives long after the pandemic is under control. Now is the time to invest stimulus dollars into projects that address climate and social equity needs, including bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, zero-emission vehicle fleet conversions and infrastructure deployment, green workforce training and job opportunities, urban greening and better access to healthy local food. TAA encourages TRC to consider developing a climate resilience strategy that will map out pathways for TRC to firstly reduce our contributions to climate change by improving energy management and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This is part of climate change mitigation. Secondly, we need to respond to a changing climate by implementing risk management measures to reduce the impact of extreme weather events and climatic changes on infrastructure, our environment and services. This is known as climate change adaptation. A climate resilience strategy for TRC should align with state, federal and international climate policies and initiatives and identify greenhouse gas emissions targets. Taking action to reduce the impacts of climate change has the potential to also reduce energy expenditures, improve food and water security, build community health and well-being, and stimulate local job creation and economic development. For example, Queensland has exceptional solar and wind resources that we could utilise to create regional jobs, diversify the economy, and drive down the cost of electricity. A new report commissioned by Solar Citizens has found that there are 10 proposed renewable energy projects for far north Queensland that could create 5,200 construction jobs, 300 operational jobs, $3.62 billion worth of investment, and enough energy to power 600,000 homes. Basically, the buck stops here with all of you. Local government is on the front line and is responsible for taking a wide range of decisions that can make or break the success of any international strategy on climate change. Local authorities are ultimately responsible for making policy a reality. According to UNDP estimates, more than 70% of climate change reduction measures and up to 90% of climate change adaptation measures are undertaken by local government. Projects delivered locally are designed to reflect local circumstances, and it is these tailor-made solutions that allow us to take effective action. The economic and social impacts of climate change on communities cannot be understated. Local governments are leading the fight against climate change, taking decisive action on transport emissions, development planning, infrastructure and waste management all around the world. But mitigation is only half the story. The changes that need to be made will have a real impact on people's daily lives, and it's vital to get the public on board. Local government can facilitate public participation to ensure local people understand the impacts of climate change, are engaged in the process of identifying solutions that might work locally. There is widespread concern on the Tablelands about climate change, as reflected in the Tablelands Community Plan and in various other forums and events that TAA has facilitated. Many areas of Council's operations will be affected by projected changes in climate. Importantly, TRC has the responsibility to adapt Council's operations to the knowable impacts of climate change, in line with sound business management and governance requirements, health and safety, and in the public interest. Most local governments across Queensland are already planning and implementing adaptation actions. Free support is available to councils through the LGAQ Climate Resilient Councils Initiative. Council simply needs to lodge an application form. This is a 5-year program working with Queensland local governments to support their leadership in responding to climate change. As you can see from this map, TRC is not currently participating in the program, but most neighbouring councils are. One of the biggest economic trends affecting communities will be the global move to a low-carbon economy. Resilient communities do not wait for the future to happen. They embrace it by adapting, organising and innovating to ensure that the key factors determining their quality of life are shaped locally. The sooner we begin our transitions, the more choices we will have in how best to sustain our vibrant region and communities into the future. As part of a no-regrets strategy, Council would be well advised to immediately take advantage of the free Climate Resilient Councils program. This would involve a briefing and a detailed governance assessment against 17 key governance indicators. The briefing would cover the core drivers for responding to climate change, including the legal drivers, as well as 2 special interest topics of Council's choice. Moving forward, it would be reasonable for TRC to address the recommendations from the LGAQ briefing and governance assessment, and to ensure that climate change is considered in all Council's future planning, decision-making and operations. Council is also encouraged to support community adaptation and mitigation options, including emerging local networks. It's also highly recommended that Council leads the development of a climate resilience strategy to guide our collective efforts to tackle and respond to climate change. TRC has the potential to play a central role in bringing together community members, industry, experts and other levels of government to ensure a coordinated approach to our collective mitigation and adaptation efforts. Now, more than ever, it is vital that Council steps up to ensure our region and community is prepared for the challenges we face from climate change. The action we take now will determine the future we create for tomorrow. Thanks very much for your time, everyone. I wondered if anyone had any questions for us or suggestions as to how to move this matter forward.
Councillors, any questions?
Oh, probably the first question, I suppose, is, well, first of all, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
I guess your suggestion about the LGAQ, I'm quite sure we could look at it and start. That's a start the process. So yeah, I haven't got a problem with that. I think that would be a good start.
Yeah, just regarding that climate resilient council, so what Councillor Hodge is talking about. So is that, if you sign up to that, are they providing you intelligence? Is that what they're providing you?
Yes.
So it's just sharing their knowledge or guidance on those matters.
That's correct. According to my understanding, there are 2 dimensions to the program. The first is a briefing on some of the core drivers for Council to actually address climate change and adapt to climate change, including some of the legal and insurance obligations. I can refer back to this slide here to cover what the briefing.
So I guess my...
Can you flick back to the briefing?
I guess my question there is probably more about, in addition to intelligence that might be provided,
yes.
Does it create any compliance burdens on councils that sign up?
There is a governance assessment, and my understanding is that that is against the 10 standard criteria, but there are 7 additional governance criteria that relate specifically to climate. So I believe that this would be an important part of Council's general approach to compliance and good governance practices, but it's augmented by consideration of the 7 additional climate-related criteria as part of that governance assessment. There is a website, and in the letter that was sent to Council late last year, there is a link. So I'd encourage perhaps Council staff to explore that link. I understand there's an application process that's very straightforward, but it is a free process, and yeah, as I say, most of the neighbouring councils have already begun participating in that. So.
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
I think probably the best course of attack on this issue is for the relevant council officers to prepare a report for council, which will acknowledge some of the gaps that exist, but will also acknowledge some of the good work that council's been doing in this area and has been for some time. As council is aware, we run the revegetation nursery out at Malanda. That has a lot of community support, and council is committed to significant re-veg programs. We've also entered into a public-private partnership under the Land Rehabilitation Fund. The council will be contributing to some rainforest revegetation on private land. On top of that, council is a reef guardian council and works closely with the wet tropics group that runs that program, as well as various other things. One of the things we've also got in consideration at the moment is an environmental offsets policy under the planning scheme, but that's yet to come back to council, and we'll have to undertake further public consultation on that. So there's some good work happening. There will be some gaps, but I think the best way to address it, as I said at the start, is for a report to come back to council, and council can consider all the implications and possible actions it may take.
Through the Mayor, and with respect, just to clarify, I would like to just make the suggestion that in order to ease the burden on council staff, perhaps that strategy could be adopted in parallel with taking up the opportunity to participate in the Free Climate Resilient Councils initiative, given that this is a service that's of benefit to councils, that has been proven to be effective, and will actually support your council staff to action your very sound recommendation as well, in a more focused way.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks for that, Leah. Certainly the way council makes decisions, they get a report and then resolves whatever the recommendation is. So I think we're all talking about the same approach, the same thing, and we'll put that in train, if you like. Thank you.
Councillors, yeah.
I just had
Councillors,
a question. Did you perchance make a presentation to the council previously?
No,
No.
not along these lines.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Okay. Thanks very much, Alan, Mia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Councillors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll leave you to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, just by the way, sorry, before we leave, there is some printed material we've left over there on that bench for you to take away with you, and
No, I won't be leaving my
oh,
resources.
well, okay, if you're not ready, I'll leave the Tablelands Action Alliance brochures there, so please take one.
Thank you. Thank you.
And if council would like to have a look at some of the resources that are available on climate change impacts in the wet tropics, I'd be more than happy to share them with anyone who's interested. So please feel free to follow up, and yeah, happy to provide some further information if that's
Very good.
helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, the mayoral minute. Now this mayoral minute relates to staff matters, so it's necessary that we go into a closed session. So could I have us move a motion to go into a closed session?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
one suggestion,
Yes.
because we've got live stream going,
Yes.
so to save turning that off, is it something council would want to consider to, again, amend the standing orders to deal with the mayoral minute when we go into closed session later in the meeting, rather than having two closed sessions? Just a thought.
We can do that. We can defer it to later on. Is everyone happy if we just defer the mayoral minute to later on? Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So can I then have a so it's a suspension of standing orders, is it? Or is that what it's called? Or?
Yes, not a suspension, it'll be an amendment.
An amendment.
Yeah.
Okay. So can I have a mover for an amendment to standing orders so that we shift the mayoral minute to the confidential session at the end of the meeting? Thank you, Councillor Cardew, and seconded Councillor Wilkes. Those in favour? Carried, thank you. All right, so now we'll go on to item 10, business arising, actions out of the minutes of the previous meeting. Business arising, anyone from the previous minutes? No business arising, thank you. So we'll go on to 11 and 11.1. So I'll ask Councillor Cardew to chair this while I leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. We have an application from Bolero Investments for a reconfiguring of a lot out on the Kennedy Highway, on the corner of Hasty Road, and I'll ask the Manager of Planning just to give us a brief overview of that, and we'll move into a motion after that. Over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. We have an application for reconfiguring a lot for a boundary realignment on behalf of Bolero Investments Proprietary Limited. Located on Kennedy Highway and 52 Hasty Road, Atherton. It is an impact accessible application, and one properly made submission has been received. The gist of the application is essentially to increase the size of the lot on which currently we have the servo, the mobile servo, by about 8,900 square meters. In doing so, it creates an opportunity for expansion for the existing operation. It also...
If I could just interrupt for a second, sorry. Mr Deputy Mayor, we forgot to move and second to go into the motion, so it's on the table.
Okay.
So if we could do that now, and the manager can continue on.
Okay, can I have a mover, please? Bernie Wilkes, Councillor Bernie Wilkes, and seconded by Councillor David Clifton. Please continue, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you. So, the application, the stated purpose of the application is essentially to secure land for a possible future extension at this point in time. The applicant doesn't have to tell us at this point in time what his intended purpose is. He has stated that the land will be necessary for a future relocation of the tank filling point and to allow for safer traffic movements by providing additional space for maneuvering, particularly for trucks and vehicles with trailers and caravans. The recommendation from the officers is to approve the application subject to conditions.
Thank you, Peter. Would anybody like to speak to this application? No? So we have a mover and a seconder to adopt the officer's recommendation. All in favour? Agreed. All in favour. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chair.
Sorry, my system's just gone down. Okay, thank you. Item 11.2, Total Ends Home Assist. Do we have Councillor Hodge moving?
I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cardew, second. Anyone would you like to talk to that, Councillor?
Yeah, just briefly, Mayor, as we've discussed before, officers are going to just make sure that as far as the assets are concerned, there's just a bit of a worry where the assets at the moment are in TRC's name. We've got to make sure that they, when it's the transition, the assets, I assume, will go to HAS. So we just got to make sure that comes, if there is a problem, that officers come back to council with a report on.
Through the Mayor, excuse me, through the Mayor, Councillor Hodge, the assets are actually in the business name. So council is the auspicing body, and the funds are transferred to the organisation, and they have purchased their assets in their own right, which is noted in the report. There is the head of power is the auspice agreement, so we'll be talking with the department in regards to that. And just to note with council, we have had preliminary discussion with the department, and at this time they are happy to progress. And I've also spoken to the chair as well as the coordinator of Home Assist. So this is a mutual discussion moving forward, and a tripartisan discussion on Home Assist and how we move forward. So today is about council having a really clear understanding of how officers are progressing to move Home Assist over to an independent organisation away from council, just to address that matter. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Cheryl.
Councillors, any more comment on that one? Okay, those in favour? Carried. Item 12.1, committee representation. Do we have a mover, councillors? Councillor Bilney, seconder. Councillor Wills. Councillor Bilney, would you like to talk to that one?
No, I concur with the officer.
Yep. Would anyone like to talk to 12.1? Those in favour? Carried. Item 12.2. Rep for LGAQ. Mover. Councillor Clifton, seconder. Councillor Hodge. Councillor Clifton, would you like to talk to that?
No, I'm happy to accept the recommendation.
Would anyone like to talk to that? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 13.1, the financial report. Do we have a mover? Councillor Hodge. Seconder. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Hodge, would you like to talk to?
Yeah, just one question, Mr. Mayor, to the Manager of Finance. Just in regard to our operating position, this report is at the end of April, so we've still got 2 months to go. We are tracking, well, you can see in the report, probably 1% down on operating expenses, which is good, and minus 7% on the revenue, and I assume that's the financial grant that hasn't is normally comes in early.
Correct.
sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So the question is the actual budgeted deficit. It looks like we're tracking roughly to that deficit by the end of the year.
So currently we're very close to budget expectations at this point in time. Each year for the last several years we've received an early payment of financial assistance grant. The impact that we're currently seeing in our accounts is that an early payment of this year's financial grant was received last year. So revenue that was allocated to this year isn't actually recorded in there. So that will see an under collection of revenue from that grant unless there is another prepayment. But we don't get advised of that prepayment, if there is to be one, until quite late in the financial year. So last year it was around the 27th of June. So
we just don't know. We don't foresee, and often it hits our accounts before we actually get formal advice as well. So it's a hard one to predict. But we are, apart from that one, we are travelling very close to budget expectations.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Billman?
Through the Mayor. Erica, given the current economical situation and as a result of Council's recent suite of initiatives, can you give me a bit of an indication as to the amount of general rates revenue, that has been deferred due to COVID-19, or Kung Flu as I like to call it?
So what we've seen, our normal end date or due date for our February rates notice was in March, so 25th of March was our due date. At that point in time, a lot of payments were made, about $2.2 million worth payment. So throughout the last few months, we are seeing some continual payments on a monthly basis, which is great to see. And so we're expecting that number to get down to about 1.6 million to the 30th of June. But that is our now new due date. So potentially that $1.6 million will be paid down quite a bit on that new due date by council. So that it's a hard one to predict. We haven't done this one before. So it's another one we just need to wait and see.
Thank you, Erica.
Councillors, any more questions? Those in favour? Carried. Item 13.2, revenue policy. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hodge, seconded Councillor Bilney. Thank you. Councillor Hodge or Bilney like to talk to that one?
No, I'm happy with the recommendation.
Agree.
Anyone else like to talk? Okay, those in favour? Carried, thank you. Item 13.3, council purchase cards. Do I have a mover? Councillor Cardew, seconder. Councillor Wills. Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, I'd like to, can I move another recommendation?
Yeah, what's the process on that? If we want an alternative recommendation.
Mr Mayor and councillors, I think the original recommendation to receive a note is uncontroversial and could be adopted anyway.
Yep.
And before Councillor Cardew moves the alternate,
yep,
could I suggest that, and I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to provide feedback to yourself or councillors on the alternate yet, but we have a workshop set down for the 11th of June on the procurement policy, which will deal with the exact subject matter here. It will also deal with other subject matter to do with procurement, and if council passes this as a resolution today, we will need to amend the procurement policy. We will then need to have a workshop on the 11th of June, and I've got no doubt after the 11th of June we will have to go back and re-amend the procurement policy. So if council's mindful of it, could I respectfully suggest that we defer this, consider the workshop on the 11th of June, and then we will have a report to the June meeting to deal with the procurement policy as a whole. We certainly understand the intention. The intention of the alternate recommendation is very clear, but I just think it's more efficient if we deal with it in one go, if you like.
Councillor Cardew?
I hear what you're saying, Bob, but this is pretty dear to our hearts at the moment, and I think just as a matter of just to amend the procurement policy from a quote-free threshold of 5,000 down to 2,000 wouldn't be too much of an onerous thing, would it?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes. It's certainly not onerous, but I think a better governance approach is to deal with all the changes at once, rather than amend, workshop, re-adopt a couple of weeks later. we could guarantee that we could have, after the workshop, a policy for council's consideration in June.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's part of the policy to be presented. If I could take the opportunity just to note something quickly, if I could, through there.
Go ahead.
So the quote three threshold from 5,000 to 2,000 under legislation, it's actually 15,000 that you must have a quote for. So this threshold is actually more stringent than legislation. So legislation requires purchases of 15,000 or greater to have quotes. So 15,000 is already more stringent than that. Part of the reason for the change to go to that 5,000 limit was to provide efficiencies and effectiveness for our staff in the field. We're often finding that $2,000 caught people out quite quickly because you would get a quote, particularly for our field staff on the ground. As soon as they're getting excavation works and that kind of thing, they could engage a supplier to do that work. Often underground works, you never know what you're going to find until you're there, and sometimes that work, and quite frequently that work, would go over that threshold of that $2,000. So that would then immediately require a halt on that work, that they would then stop and then have to come back and get quotes. So that's the type of thing that we are trying to change with the $5,000. It's still under the legislated threshold. And having a look at our transactions, so from July to April, we've only had 15,000 transactions, 15 transactions over $4,000. So it's very rarely we're actually, from a purchase car point of view, going over that $5,000, but it does enable our field staff to get the job done as they need it in a quick, efficient manner, which is the reason why the level was changed.
Thanks, Erica. Look, I'm not quite convinced that that's where we should be going. I'd probably like to do something a bit more instructive, and perhaps we could give an instruction that is to be delivered when that review is done. So rather than so it's not effective from today, but perhaps we can give an instruction that comes into effect when the review is done. Does that sound, Councillor Karju? Does that sound?
Yeah. I mean, does any other councillors have any comment on it?
Yep.
I can understand Bob's point of view of having a one-stop shop coherent, a good yarn, and rather than puddling with it, if you like. But I think that the point is that I don't speak for every council, but I'd like to see it reined in. Now, I'd like to see it reined in so that only those people who genuinely had a need to have a car had one. I think the suggestion was that there was 90 odd cars. I would expect that when we get to have the discussion we're talking about, that the expenditure patterns of those cards would all be made available in the report, so that those people who are not using cards don't need cards. Remove them from the system. So I would support Councillor Bob's proposal to just note this report and put it off until we have the thing on in June. But I do want to stress that it is time that we really had a good look at this system to peg it back a bit. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just add further. When I say what I'm saying it from the matter of good governance. It's not speaking for or against the proposed recommendation. But I think, as we've mentioned quite a few times, a good decision is an informed decision, and at the moment we're dealing with this in isolation, without what I think is the necessary background information for all of council to consider. I think once we have the workshop, you get the report in June, you're going to have all the facts and circumstances behind the policy that will allow you to make an informed decision. whatever that is.
Sorry, did you put your...
Yeah, I'd just like to speak. Well, look, I understand where Bob's coming from, but I know personally, and I've been going through the policies of every other council, and I know like Cairns City Council is still $2,000. So I think it should go, we should make a decision to the first part, at least the first part, reduce the quote threshold from 5 to 2. If, in regards to the credit cards, if you want a report to come back, but if Councillor Cardew wishes to move that resolution,
It is moved. It's moved and seconded.
That's it, moved and seconded. That particular one?
I think, through you, Mr Mayor, I think it was moved, but I don't think we have a seconder at this stage, Jackie, is that right?
We got a move and a seconder for the officer's resolution, but Councillor Cardew is the only one to move the
Apologies,
amendment.
yes, we had a mover and seconder for the
officer's recommendation,
yes,
but not
apologies.
for the amendment.
Yeah, okay. All right, so have we voted on the officer's recommendation? We haven't, have we?
I don't believe so.
So
No, we haven't voted on the officer's recommendation.
If we vote on the officer's recommendation, can we no longer continue with this discussion about the alternative recommendation?
It's not an amendment so much as a new motion.
Yes.
Again, I would suggest that if council wants to consider a completely new motion in addition to the officer's recommendation, that probably the easiest way to do it, Mr Mayor, is to suspend standing orders, going to allow that to be moved and seconded. Okay, well look, can I have a mover to suspend standing orders? So that we can move that and test it. Councillor Hodge. Seconded. Councillor Clifton. Sorry, Mr Mayor, will we deal with the officer's recommendation first and vote on that? Sorry, Bob. Yes. So let's do that first. So can Councillor Hodge and Councillor Clifton withhold that suspension? And we'll vote on the officer's recommendation. Those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Carried. And can I now ask to suspend standing orders? Councillor Hodge and Councillor Clifton, suspending standing orders to discuss further Councillor Cardew's proposed motion. Councillor Clifton, did you say something?
Oh, no, there's muttering to stop. We have to put it to a vote.
Yeah. So we got the...
A seconder for that motion kept saying.
Okay, so Councillor Cardew's motion needs a seconder. And that is... Yeah, so we've got a seconder with Councillor Hodge. And any more discussion on this one from councillor? Any councillor on this one?
If I can.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Wills.
I have to agree with Bob. We've discussed before the value of informed decisions. I really think we should be waiting until after the workshop. And just looking at it, like it's only, what, the 11th of June isn't that far off. So as much merit as I appreciate in Councillor Cardew's thought process, I really think we should be value adding to the whole argument.
Okay, any further comments? Thanks, Councillor Wills. Okay, if we can, those in favour of councillor Cardew's motion? Okay, defeated, so two in favour, 5 opposed. Can I just to take a 10-minute break, do we need to, yeah, can I just move to adjourn for morning tea, please? Can I have a mover? Councillor Cardew, seconder, Councillor Hodge, those in favour? Okay, yeah, just 10 minutes, huh? 5 past 10.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to inform council, the live feed will probably be continuing during morning tea.
Okay.
So anything you say will probably be picked up on the microphones.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, 10 minutes, everyone. Thank you.
camera's now live.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so can we?
We just need a time that we've started again.
Okay, so
We
yeah,
haven't
can,
used the motion previously for snow
can we have a mover to go back into back into the agenda? Councillor Wills, seconder. Councillor Bilney. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. So the 13.4, delegation of statutory powers. Have a mover?
Just before we do, Mayor, can I just, can I do this, just get an explanation on this, or I've got to move it first?
We've got to move it before we can discuss it.
Okay, well, I'll move it.
Councillor Hodge moved, seconder. Councillor Hayden. Councillor Hodge.
Yeah, just in regards to this particular one, it's all about water licences. Is it council's water licences, or what is it? Because I've just amended some water licences and it's all through Doom. What's this one? I don't quite understand what it is.
Yeah, so this is for a holder of a water allocation. So under the legislation, any holder of a water allocation would have the ability to apply for a seasonal assignment change, depending on the available water under the normal license. So in this case, because we have a water license, it would apply to us. So this is for us to be able to apply for a change to the seasonal allocation if we need to. I can't recall when we've ever done this.
Yeah.
I can't imagine when we ever do this.
Okay, I understand now. So it's our water, the water licences at TRC hold.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have any more councillors want to talk to this one? Okay. Sorry.
Just generally, Mr. Mayor, I think it's important to point out to the people online and to councillors that these delegations aren't open slather. They are strictly controlled, and I refer everyone to Schedule 2 of the instrument of delegation, which shows 9 limitations on the exercise of power. And I think that's really important to give councillors and the public satisfaction that these delegations are exercised responsibly and with a lot of forethought and consideration. So I just want to reiterate it's not just go out there and do what you want, it's very strictly controlled. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Those in favour? Carried. Item 13.5, the Delegation of Statutory Powers Disaster Management Act. A mover, Councillor Wilts, and seconded Councillor Bilney. Councillor Wilts or Bilney, like to talk to that one?
No, I fully agree with the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Bilney?
Agree.
Yeah. Anyone? No? Those in favour? Carried. 14. Item 14.1, State Emergency Services Shed.
So I'll move that.
Councillor Cardew. Seconder.
What are you moving?
That we accept this report and talk about it.
Yes. So I understand. Yeah, Councillor Hayden, were you seconding that? Yes. Yep. So we've got a mover and a seconder. So I might go to you, to Councillor Cardew, you can talk to it.
Yeah, look, I'm not in favour of the recommendation as it stands. I think that putting another building on this parcel of land where it's proposed to go without any sort of overall concept design for the whole of the site I think we could be impeding future avenues for the use of this land. So I intend to move a motion to not to approve the construction of the proposed SES vehicle storage shed adjacent to the new CEDCC building as presented, and also to consider, for council to consider providing funds in the 2020-21 budget for future development master plan for the entire site between Vernon Street, Robert Street and Maple Streets.
So if I may, through the chair, not saying anything against that motion, it's perfectly fine. Just making council aware that council in 2017 adopted the integrated community services master plan for the precinct master plan for this site. So there is a master plan for this site. Just want to make you aware of that.
And following on from that, so is there does it have a shed there?
So the master plan is a concept master plan, so it talks about functions in the area and generally what it looks like. It does talk about having an emergency response and service disaster management function in the area, and that's why we also built this building here. It doesn't specifically indicate exactly where that is, how big it is, and if it is a shed or another type of building.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
I think as a point of order, and again, sorry, because I've just seen this now, an amendment shouldn't be totally contradictory to the original motion. If council does not want to approve the construction of the shed, that is open to council by voting against the original recommendation. If council votes against it and the approval for the construction is lost, then certainly the second part of Councillor Cardew's alternate is to look at a master plan is valid. But if you vote against the original recommendation, that shed will not be constructed. So I think that the first alternative is not required.
So I think we need to consider the recommendation of the agenda item as in the report. We'll deal with that. I think we need to deal with that first, and that'll direct us where we go next. So would anyone else like to talk to this before we put the officer's recommendation to the test? Councillor Bilney?
Through the Mayor, I feel that there is a need to provide something for the SES in due course, given what they're currently operating from. I do have some grave concerns about the removal of the substantial 100-year-old tree out there and the reputational damage potentially caused on council. So I'm very mindful of those issues.
Anyone else like to talk? Councillor Wills, then Councillor Clifton.
Yeah, I think all councillors would share the belief that something's got to happen with the SES because they're working at pretty ordinary conditions at the moment. But yeah, it'd be good to have a look at the master plan and just to be part of that process. But I think for now we most probably all agree that we're not overly happy with where the proposed site is.
Councillor Clifton?
Yeah, talking on the same vein as other councillors, the need exists for the SES to have better facilities, but whether it needs to be right in the centre of our city in one of the most prime parcels of land that we have available for planning and for redeveloping our city is another matter altogether, and I'm not in favour of the motion as it is.
Councillor Hayden, did you want to say anything? Yeah. Anyone else before we put it to
just
the vote?
echo the same as Councillor Clifton.
Okay, so those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Councillor Hayden, thank you. Okay, so that's defeated. So are we now able to deal with Councillor Cardew's?
Jackie, if you could bring that up so we can see it, please, through you, Mr. Mayor. So through you, Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Cardew would acknowledge that part one of the alternative has been dealt with.
Yeah,
by
we
the
can
previous
delete.
vote.
Yeah, I'm happy to delete that and still go forward with part two.
Okay, so Councillor Cardew's suggested motion is that we allocate some funds in this coming budget to look more closely at the development of a master plan. Having not seen the one Mark's talking about, this may be something that we need to do. So, right. Yes, do we have a seconder? So Councillor Hodge, thank you. Sorry about that. Anyone else like to talk to this? Councillor Bilney?
Yeah, through the Mayor, I would actually like to revisit the General Manager's discussion about there being a master plan already in existence, rather than just issuing more money. I would prefer to have a look at that first, and then if we need to rehash it, we'll go down that road then.
I'll just go to Councillor Thorpe and then back to you.
My understanding was that it wasn't actually a master plan, it was a sort of an overall concept strategy, and that had never been developed into a master plan. I've only heard of the strategy yesterday whilst we were looking at the site. I'm not aware personally of a master plan, but perhaps Mr. Owen could sort of shed some light on the meaning of what I'm saying.
Yes, certainly through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, I know that there's been so much information that you've been bombarded with since early April, but in one of the workshops there was a link provided to a document called the
Integrated Community Services Precinct, so
ICSP, which shows that plan, but we'll make that available for councillors again. It's referred to as a master plan, but as Mark mentioned, it's really a high-level concept plan. It doesn't go into the detail that you may have in a detailed master plan, but I suggest that passing this recommendation today really won't change the future consideration of that plan. You're only to consider providing funds in the budget, so that will then become part of the budget process for you to determine in due course. And I'd suggest that once you have a good look at the current plan, you'll then decide whether that meets your needs or whether you want to do more detailed planning for this area. And that will again form part of that budget discussion.
Councillors?
Can I just have one question? Mark, you did, I don't read so much. You didn't refer to the master plan or the strategy in your in your document to council in any meaningful way, from my perspective. Was there a reason for that?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Clifton, through the chair. The reason why I didn't refer to it because the reason for the report coming to council was that we had a discussion at the first budget review in November, where we asked for additional funds to deliver the SES shed where it's currently proposed in accordance with the defeated recommendation. The question at the time of the councillors was to not enter into construction until we brought back a report that confirmed the construction costs and provided advice in relation to the amount of trees to be removed. So it wasn't a question about how it fitted within the master plan or anything like that. The specific question was, can you firm up the construction cost, and can you tell us how many trees would have to be removed to put that shed there? So that's the purpose of this report, and that's why I didn't refer to the master plan.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further comments on this one?
I suppose that the intent of this motion is just for council to consider providing funds in the budget for future. So it's only there for consideration. So if we consider putting some funds in the budget for a future master plan, it may not necessarily have to be done straight away, but I think we need to start providing some funds for a master plan for this site, because unless you have something concrete to work with, we'll be getting proposals put up to us all the time for different buildings and higgly-piggly all over the place. So it's just for consideration and to provide some funds in the budget for the development of a master plan for this site.
Councillors, more comments? So we've got a mover and a seconder for your motion, Councillor Karju. Yeah. All right. Those in favour? Carried. Very good.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if it suits council, just for your information, what we might try and do is schedule a short session in one of the upcoming workshops.
Yep.
Just to have a look at that ICSP master plan.
Yep.
So that councillors can become more familiar with it.
Yep. Yep. Agreed. Okay. Item 14.2. Register of Roads Maintained Policy. Do we have a mover? Councillor Bilney, Councillor Hayden, seconder. Councillor Bilney.
Yes, through the Mayor. Can I ask the question of General Manager Infrastructure Services? Is it fair to say that the rescinding of this policy will then be replaced with the Roads Maintenance Management Plan, which is still in draft format? If so, when is it likely that we will see the draft, first point? And secondly, in the former policy document, it interpreted that maintenance would only be undertaken up to the second last property, as the last property was considered to be their driveway. Under the new plan, does this interpretation continue?
Through the Chair, thank you, Councillor Bilney. There's one I prepared earlier, so I'll be reading it. There's a bit to it. So, the Road Maintenance Management Plan would not replace the policy. There is no need for a policy because Council's obligations and responsibilities in relation to road maintenance are prescribed in legislation, specifically the Local Government Act Section 60 and the Civil Liability Acts Sections 35 and 37. The Road Maintenance Management Plan is an operational document that describes how council officers inspect, plan for, schedule and undertake road maintenance in consideration of legislative requirements, council's priorities, budget and resource allocations, road safety risks and industry standards and practices. The plan is currently under review, so there is a current plan, but we're reviewing it. And that review should be finalised and approved by me before the end of this financial year. Once approved, the management plan is a public document and should, in my view, be published on the council's website. The current Register of Roads to be Maintained policy states the following. So that's the one that we're proposing to rescind. As a matter of course, council officers will not undertake maintenance activities on roads not included in the Register of Roads Maintained. And that's relevant to the second part of your question, because the policy subsequently lists several conditions which a road or a section of road would need to comply with to be able to be added to or removed from the Register of Roads Maintained. And only if they were removed or not added to, then we would not be providing maintenance to those sections of roads under that policy. In reality, we haven't removed any roads off that register, and by default, through developments and donated assets, we have added roads to that register since the policy was adopted. One of these conditions that it would need to comply with was that the road traffic count must exceed on an annual average daily traffic count of 20 vehicles per day. And industry standard is that we assume 10 vehicles per residence per day. So with that note, roads that would only service one residential property could potentially not be added or could be removed from the Register of Roads to be maintained. As I said, we have only added, we haven't removed. Once rescinded, these conditions included in policy will no longer apply, and as per Section 60 of the Local Government Act, Council will have and exercise its control over all roads within its local government area, with the exception of private roads and state-controlled roads. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Jim. That's a fairly comprehensive reply.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, any other discussion on this one? More questions? Okay, those in favour? Carried. Item 14.3, Wrights Creek Bridge. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clifton, seconder. Councillor Wills. Councillor Clifton.
I think everyone's sick of hearing about Wrights Creek Bridge. I think this, one thing I have noted is, and I have requested advice as to whether the role of the bridge has ever been considered as part of the tourism strategy of the regional council area. The Itchen Scrub is a really, really significant bit of rainforest that's very readily accessible. There are only 3 entries to it. 2 on Lakes Drive, the most commonly used, and the third one is Wrights Creek, Wrights Creek Road. The previous proposal was that the bridge be pulled down. In my view, that's a bit premature. There is the potential for discussions to be held with other government departments in relation to access to and development of Wrights Creek Falls, which still relates in our tourist information. It's been sort of allowed to fall into disarray. It represents genuine alternative rainforest experience for tourists, and we do want to include tourists, so the purpose of this is to allow us a bit of time to consider it in another context besides the actual physical condition of the bridge, which I acknowledge is in a poor state. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. Councillors, any other comment on this one? Councillor Billy?
Through the Mayor. Look, I actually agree with the proposal as it's presented as a temporary measure. It's my opinion, though, that this bridge still needs to be part of the star rating, which was the road transport strategy. Should be applied to it, so that it is consistent with the other bridges in the area, and then that we are ensuring priority is placed on those bridges that have got the highest usage or importance.
Councillors?
I'm happy with the report.
Yeah. Those in favour? Carried. Item 15.2, notice that, oh sorry, wrong, I missed one. 15.1, Councillor Clifton, notice of motion. Yeah. Councillor Clifton, a seconder. Councillor Hodge, thank you. Councillor Clifton, would you like to talk to that?
Coming into this council, I really am learning that the senior officers of council had already foregone a contracted wage rise last year and have agreed to do the same thing this year. Was a very generous action on their behalf, and that's why I'd like to have this motion commending them, making it known to the people of our community that officers have taken this action. And it behoves councillors then to follow the lead of our senior officers to do exactly the same thing. So hence the motion. We are due for councillors are due for an increase of allowances on the 1st of July of 2%, actually I think it's 1.96, to freeze that as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else like to talk to that? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Item 15.2. Notice of motion, Councillor Clifton. Would you like to move that motion?
I'm happy to move. Yep.
Yeah. Seconder. Councillor Cardew. Would you like to talk to that, Councillor Clifton?
Thank you, Mayor. This relates to the park opposite the hotel in Kirai. It's a Lions Park, so named in memory of one of the pioneers of the area, Mr. Johnson. It's central to the community of Kirai, and it has been used illegally in the past for camping. It has a almost derelict toilet on it. I suppose I was offended to know that we put it on the market without any evidence of community consultation. This motion seeks to rescind that motion, passed previously, and in the course of time demolish the public toilet and plan for a replacement adjacent to the playgrounds. I've asked that a replacement toilet be placed on the Capital Works program and it would be over the road next to the children's playground where there is no toilet at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone else like to talk to this one? Those in favour? So that's carried 7. Thank you.
Was that carried unanimously?
Yeah, it was. It was, yes. Item 15.3. Again, to you, Councillor Clifton. Would you like to move that one?
Thank you. I move.
Moved, Councillor Clifton. Seconded, Councillor Cardew. Back to you, Councillor Clifton.
Again, this is this parcel of land is adjacent to the Kirai Community Hall. The figures show that the Kirai Community Hall had 109 uses last year. That is, this year is not so many, but because of COVID, it's used by a
Thank you. Thank you.
No, Councillor. Oh, Hayden with her hand up. Sorry, I thought you were at the point of order. No, it's used by daycare. It's used by some churches in the area. Without that block of land that is proposed to have been sold off, there are, on the advice of the GM Infrastructure, 10 parking spaces, so that for more than 10 cars there you've got to park on a state road. It does rest in some of the older residents' memories as the site of the old Catholic church that many of them went to as kids. It's a vacant block, but their memories are still there. And finally, again, there was no community consultation in relation to this. So, thus my motion to rescind. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone else like to talk to this one? Councillor Hayden.
Okay. As an amendment motion, I would like to put at the end of the current proposed resolution, add on the following amendment. But reserves the right to sell the land in future should council have no further use for the subject lot.
How do we deal with this one?
Councillor Hayden's moved it, Mr Mayor. If the amendment is to be considered, we'll need a second before that
Okay.
proposed amendment.
So we can do this while the current...
Yes, because it's actually amending the original.
Amending it, yep, gotcha. Okay, so councillor Hayden proposed an amendment. So do we have a seconder for councillor Hayden? So we've got councillor Wills seconding that one. Anyone else like to talk to this one? Okay, so we'll vote on the amendment now, is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. So those in favour of the amendment? So that's carried. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So councillor Clifton and councillor Marty were opposed.
That's recorded, Mr Mayor.
I don't need mine recorded. No.
I don't need mine recorded.
No. Okay, so now we go back to the original.
As amended.
Sorry, as amended. So we go back to the original motion with the amendment. Gotcha. Yep. So are we okay? Are we ready to vote on this one? Anyone like to discuss anything before we vote on this one? Councillor Cardew?
Yeah, through the Mayor. With regards to this lot, I mean, it's adjacent to the Kiwi Hall, and when there's large functions, this lot's predominantly used for car parking. So with only 10 lot, if this lot were to be sold in the future or whenever, and we retain the Kiwi Hall as a community hall, then parking's going to be an issue. Already, if there's a wedding or a large function in that hall, which there's been many of, and I'm assuming there will probably be more of in the future, then parking's a real issue in my view, because you've got a state-controlled road going around that corner there, and if people are parking all over the sides of the roads, I would think you'd have increased safety issues, especially with kids crossing the road. You know, if you've got a function where you've got children, you know, running from where the cars are parked on the road. So I think this bit of land, this lot, is essential to the community hall. So while we own the community hall and still functions as a community hall, I think this lot is essential to the parking provisions for that hall, for the use of that hall. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, councillor Cardew. Councillor Wills, then councillor Hodge.
Yeah, thanks, through the Mayor. Yep, totally agree, Kev. It would only, to me, looking at the amendment as proposed, council would only sell it if they saw that there was no further use for it. So if the hall is at a point where that lot of land is required for the parking, well, obviously they're akin to each other. Yeah, so that's my view with that.
Councillor Hodge?
Sort of a point of order, does this go against the original motion? If I can go through you, because what we're saying is we're going to rescind not to sell it, but then there's an amendment to say, well, if we don't want it, we can sell it. I think that amendment is not valid.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to address that. In my opinion, it is valid. It's not saying that council will sell the land, but it's just reserving the right to do so if there's no further use. Now, that reservation of the right is subject to a further council resolution. So that as it stands, the land will not be sold, but if circumstances change in the future, a report would come back to council saying, well, you've reserved the right to sell it if it's not being used, and then at that time, council could decide to sell it or could decide to retain ownership of it. So it's really just reserving a right. It's not against the original recommendation in my view.
So just so I'm really clear in my mind, we could only sell that block, which is the vacant block, that's what we're rescinding, if the hall is sold. Is that what's being said here? I just want to get it really clear.
Councillor Clifton.
Fine. Although, Councillor Hodge, I didn't vote with the amendment, but I understand the amendment completely. Without the amendment, the council still always has had the right to dispose of the block. Even though we rescind the motion, this particular motion, we always have the right to dispose of it. Councillor Hayden's motion states that right rather than have it inferred, but it also has potentially a positive effect within the community in the sense that I've heard things said about Kirrai community that they don't have a progress association. They don't do much without being too outspoken and too unkind. This may remind them that they can't take everything for granted always. So, although I didn't vote for the amendment, I think it's a good amendment there. I don't think it changes the meaning of the motion.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Okay, councillors, any more on this one? Those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Yeah, everyone. Okay. So now we go to item 17.1. Business without notice. Apologies. Business without notice. Councillor Clifton.
I have no business without notice, but I note that the word urgent is still there.
It was a typo.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any business without notice? Councillor Hodge?
Yes, thanks. I've had representation from the people who use the dog park on Herman Road. The problem they got at the moment is a lot of the older people are now not using the park because when they take their smaller dogs there, people with large dogs not only knock their dogs over but nearly knock them over as well. So people have come to me and said, can you do something where maybe from 3 to 4, it's only for elderly people with small dogs? And I said, well, look, I'll put it to council. So I think I've got a resolution up there that would officers bring back a report to council on how we may manage the park in that regard.
Through Bob, is Councillor Hodges' request worthy of a report to council, or can we deal with it some other way? I'm just thinking a report to council on that particular topic could be excessive, I think, is the question.
Mr Mayor, if councillors are mindful of looking at this issue, I believe that we can put procedures in place at an operational level to address the concerns, and we can do it as a trial and see if it works, but in my view we don't need to go to the time and expense of preparing a report. We're happy to take that on board and see what management procedures we can put in place, as I said, at an operational level.
Is that reasonable, Councillor Hodge?
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, good. So I'll withdraw that.
Very good, thank you. Business without notice, anyone else? Okay, thank you. Now item 17, confidential items. Okay, councillors, we have 2 confidential items now, so we have. Sorry. Yeah, that's right. So.
Before I leave, Mr Mayor, can I just grab a photo?
Yeah, of the group.
No, just yourself.
Yeah, just here. Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Then he brush his hair first. Sorry.
Then I'll get out of your way. And I'll just get one with Bob as well. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Phil,
you.
I'll remember that.
Thank you. All right, so we've got two confidential items. One relates to staff matters, that's the mayoral minute. And the other one, I haven't got that one. Oh, yes, I do. What's the
Lease of the Herbert and Childcare Centre, Mr Mayor.
yeah, and what's the reason for that to go confidential? You've got to have a.
It says here,
For which a public discussion will be invited to produce the interests of local government or someone else, or enable the person to gain government.
Thank you.
And the specific reason, Mr Mayor, is because we'll be discussing potential tenders in terms of leases.
Yes.
So if that was discussed in public, it may give people a financial advantage when they come to tender.
Yes. Very good. Okay, so
would you like me to move that we go into confidential?
we do need a mover. Yes, please, Councillor Hodge. Councillor Hodge is moving, we go into confidential for those two reasons. And Councillor Wilts is seconding that. Those in favour? Carried. Thank you.
Just wait till the camera's turned off.
Okay.
And confirmed.
Which one? Just to turn it to the air media, the right hand one. Right. No. That's left. You want that back screen? Oh yeah, that's the back one. Not that it really matters, it's only